Is it possible for Excel to generate a random number? If I'm asking the question, the answer is obviously yes. In order to generate a random number, for whatever purposes you might need to use a random number, there is a simple, straightforward function, and that is equals rand. Open brackets, close brackets. A bit like today, it doesn't require any parameters, it just calculates a random number. Return, and my number is generated. That random number is anywhere between 0 and 1. Now it will generate a new random number every time the spreadsheet opens or every time you tell the sheet to refresh. Now we can tell the sheet to refresh by going to Formulas, Calculation Options, and here we have Calculate Sheet. You'll notice it has a keyboard shortcut of Shift and F9. So every click generates a new random number, or every Shift and F9 generates a new random number. But I don't want my random number to be between 0 and 1. Not a problem. All we need to do is take the random number we've been given and multiply it by an amount that we would like our random number to be between. So let's move down to A3 and say equals rand multiplied by 10 and return. And we find it takes our random number and multiplies it by 10. Now this random number is different to this random number. If I were to take this little function here and copy it across, just as an example, you'll see every cell is a different random number. So it doesn't generate a single random number per worksheet. It generates a single random number for each time you use the formula. So here we have rand times 10. So that's any value between 0 and 1 will now be multiplied by 10. So your result will be somewhere between 0 and 10. That includes all the decimal places. If you want to be a bit more restrictive and you don't want those decimal places, then we simply add in the int function that we've seen previously. So we say equals int. So I'm only interested in the whole number value of our randomly generated number between 0 and 1, multiplied by 10. That way I will get returned a randomly generated number now between 0 and 10. And we see the first one we get is 1. But we run calculate a few times, and we get a 0. All the other random numbers are changing at the same time. We get a 4, we get a 0, we get a 0, we get a 5, we get a 7, we get a 5, we get a 4. So each calculation will now give me a number between 0 and 10. Now you can be even more restrictive using another random number generator, which is actually called rand between. So instead of being given a random number between 0 and 1 and then you multiply up, you can actually just say, I would like a random number between, and give it a range. So between 7 and 12, between 3 and 9, any range you like. I'd like mine to be between 1 and 7. And because I give it two whole numbers, the rand between result is always whole numbers. So I can only ever see from that rand between, in this particular case, a whole number between 1 and 7. And you can see with each refresh, I get a different number in the range. Now the use of random numbers are varied and wide, but we're going to show one example now where we could randomly generate any day of the week or any month of the year, which obviously we could then make use of. So how do we randomly generate one day of the week when all we can randomly generate are numbers? Well, we join together our little random function and the VLOOKUP function. So let's start a new cell here, and I want a random day of the week. Well, luckily I have prepared in the weekdays sheet a set of weekdays and a set of months. They're also stored as named ranges. So the days is this range here, and the years is this range here. So back in here, I can say equals VLOOKUP. Now the value I'd like to look up is a randomly generated number between 1 and 7. So rand between 1, 7, comma. The table I would like to look up in is the one called days. I'd like to return column 2, please, which is the actual day of the week. And then false, because I need an exact match. Return, and I get Saturday. With each refresh, I will get a different random day of the week by using the random for the number, and then I do a lookup with the number. And we could do exactly the same to work out a random month of the year. Equals VLOOKUP. So this is bringing back our VLOOKUP skills. Rand between. This time my random numbers are to be between 1 and 12. comma, the table is actually the years named range, and column 2, and then false for the exact match. It must find a number between 1 and 12. Return, and I get August. Recalculating, you see I get a different random month, different random day of the week, as well as all these different random numbers. So that's the rand function to generate a straightforward random number, rand between for generating random numbers between a bottom and a top value, both included in the random choices.